Welcome to Groups This Week. As a church, we exist to help all people become fully devoted followers of Jesus. We believe doing life together is a crucial part of that journey. During this time, we're going to unpack and dig deeper into the sermon we heard this past week. Let's dive in as we continue to grow in our faith, knowledge, and love of Jesus together.
Well, hello, church.
Hey, everybody.
I'm Pastor Brad with Pastor Sam. Here, Ryan is away, so it's up to Sam and I
See if we can hold it down.
Yeah, we'll try to hold the fort. When the cat's away, the mice will play. But we wanted to maybe take a bit of a deeper dive into some of the themes and the thoughts that you would have heard if you were at the weekend service and listened to the sermons, as we're looking at the second half of chapter 3 in the book of Romans.
Which is really the turning point.
Oh, you love this
right?
so much.
I love this so much.
Sam was so
I've been
excited
waiting.
at this point.
I've been waiting.
And you like it because...
Well, it's kind of the hinge of the book. And lots of scholars have pointed to the fact that this is the central text. I think Martin Luther said it was not only the central text of Romans, but of the entirety of the Bible.
Yeah. I think that's kind of...
So it's a beautiful, beautiful
Yeah, we've been talking about a few weeks that you were excited to get. It's been such a... Paul's been laying out his case, and in order to get to the cure, you have to talk about what the disease is. So Paul's been doing that. So good on all of you for sitting through it and going,
we made it.
We'll trust you that this is going to get better. But there's a few things, we get into this area where we start talking about some of Paul's core theology. And one of the words that I think most Christians just go, oh, yeah, I get what that means, is the word faith. Right. And so Paul's going to use the word faith a lot in this next, throughout. But what do we mean when we use the word faith?
Great question. And actually, a book that you gave me a few years ago really helped to expand my understanding of faith. And that was a book by Matthew Bates called
Justification by Allegiance.
Yeah. And so this word faith comes from the original word pistis, which is more than just belief. Like, I think a lot of times we think about faith intellectually, like to believe the right stuff. And I think it starts there.
Yeah, but which makes it hard to know whether you've held on to it. Like,
right, exactly.
Do I have faith in it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do I believe it enough today? Right. So it starts with belief. But it's more than that. It's about allegiance to Jesus. Yeah. And so it's saying, I trust him and I have allegiance to him. That what he said, I believe what he says is true. I'm going to align my life with his way of life and being. What would you add to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the way that I know Pastor David and I were both explaining kind of in our introduction to the series is this idea that a lot of the themes in Romans are that there's sin, capital S, like this power over us that we're enslaved to, and then there's the sin of kind of our everyday
individual.
Yeah, and so when we talk about faith as allegiance, we're saying, oh, I'm going to live under this reign of the new cosmic king who's come in and like the what are they? Oh man, I forgot the name of them in Lord of the Rings. Anyway, the hobbits. When the hobbits come back to the Shire and they kick Wormtongue out and they kick the doors down and get all the evil out. Mm-hmm. It's our way of going, yes, we trust that Jesus has done that and we are going to live in that reign. So that the beautiful part about that is then we don't go, oh, I made a mistake. Have I lost my salvation? Whereas many of us who grew up in the evangelical tradition might go, oh man, am I really holding on to faith cognitively somehow? Rather than going, no, am I living the long obedience in the same direction, right? So you fall down. Of course, if you're on a path in a direction, you can fall, but you're still facing that direction, still moving in that way. I think the other way and you and I were talking about this the other day, is that we need to getting away from this cognitive idea of just trying to hold on to this belief. Do I really believe that Jesus is who he said he was? Do I really believe that he rose from the dead? And going, no, I'm going to, in active ways.
Yes.
In active ways.
And James talks.
I'm going to trust it's true. Yeah, James 2:6, I think, right? Faith without works is dead.
Yeah.
So our faith is dead. So how do we actively do that? And the thing you and I were talking about the other day is thinking of faith as sitting in a chair. You don't just look at the chair and go, yeah, I trust that to hold me.
You have to start there.
You start there because that's what motivates you to do the next thing, which is to actually sit in the chair.
Right.
So in different ways in our life, how can we practice faith? Because it has to be active. So how do we practice it in our family? How do we practice it at work? How do we practice it in school?
Our finances.
Our finances, yeah. Everyone, I didn't want to talk about that, but yeah, finances as well. That one as well. We're all working. So good. So I think that's a lot to chew on and people to talk through.
And then I'll ask that. Do you read that one verse that talks about faith in Jesus? And there's an interesting hermeneutical.
The kind of scholarly
Yeah.
debate area, sure. So in chapter 3, verse 22, there's some debate about how we're supposed to take this. It says, the righteousness is given through faith in Jesus Christ to all who believe. Or some other translations would say that this righteousness is given through the faith of Jesus Christ.
To everyone who has faith in
To everyone who has faith in him. So there's Jesus' faith or Jesus' righteousness
Faithfulness,
or his
yeah.
faithfulness, and then our faithfulness. So
Which one is
which one should we take? Because in the Greek, you can literally, it's 50-50. You can take it either way. So we have to start looking at context and things like that. So how do we rectify the idea of, is it the faith of Jesus that saves us, or our faith in Jesus?
What do you think it is?
Playing pickleball?
Wasn't it?
It's God's work. It's Jesus' faithfulness to trust and live out God's plan for our redemption.
And so I actually like that translation best.
So do I.
Yeah.
So do I. And I think also we can expand that to say, Israel, Paul's just coming out of a big conversation about the law not saving us. Israel, who was meant to live out as the children of the living God and did not pull it off in full faithfulness. And then Jesus comes and he completely fulfills the law.
He's the true Israel.
Yeah, he's the amen to all of God's promises. He's the yes to all of our questions of God. And so he lives that. So yes, so we look at Jesus' perfect faithfulness, and then that doesn't negate the other way to interpret it, to go, and we're going to hook on to that. So it all becomes always about Jesus.
Yeah. So the answer is kind of yes. It's
Yeah. So is
Jesus'
it about
faithfulness.
Jesus' faithfulness or our faithfulness? Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So one of the other questions that people might have is why is Abraham such a great example? Why pick the father Abraham, the father of the Hebrew nation? Why is he the perfect example of what faith apart from law looks like?
I mean, I think for a few reasons. If you consider the audience that Paul's writing to, one of the themes that he's building all the way throughout the book is that there's no distinction between Jew and Gentile, right? And so I think this serves as a great analogy for that audience, because before, maybe they're looking to Abraham and saying he's the father of the Jewish faith. He was circumcised. He was, and what Paul is saying is before he was any of that.
Yeah.
He was justified by faith,
Right.
by his allegiance to God. Even though he didn't know what was going to come ahead, he said, "I'm going to align with God," and here he is.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, again, Israelites are just always looking back to Abraham. Jesus actually gets after them for that. Like, you think Abraham's your father? Actually, he's not your father.
Yeah.
I won't get to that part. But before circumcision, before law, before he had seen anything other than a promise from God that he jumped into, he's considered kind of the ideal to look at, because technically Abraham was a Gentile.
That's right.
He was called as a Gentile before he was Abram and then becoming Abraham, and God promised that he would be the father of many nations. And so here we see this fulfillment happening through Christ.
So I think it's also a really unifying example, because he was both Gentile and the father of the Jewish
Yeah,
faith.
exactly. So it's a beautiful kind of connecting of everything. I think Paul knew what he was doing. Maybe
Seems that way.
Yeah, I think there's some other interesting things with Abraham in that, especially as we move into this new life and being Paul moving out of the being dead in our sins and unable to save ourselves, and then in I think it's 4:22, it says Abraham was as good as dead. Like he had no offspring. There was no future. There was nothing left to come. It was going to end with him and Sarah. And so there's this idea of resurrection. There's this idea of new life that's promised through the gospel, that was initially promised to Abraham, that through Genesis 12, that through his offspring, all of the world would be blessed. And all of the world would be given new life. So even though in the law or without Jesus, we are as good as dead, with this new revelation. But now, because of this gospel that Paul is proclaiming, we are given new life and a new future.
So good.
Yeah, and just stepping into this, dare Brad say it, this new beautiful story.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah.
And I think what Paul's doing in this section as well is he's because one of the questions that the Jewish believers would have had is God faithful to his covenant?
Yeah.
Right? That he made to Abraham all these years back. And what Paul is saying is he is, but not in the way we thought it was going to. It looks so different than what we thought. And he's unpacking that it's through Jesus. Yes, this lineage of Abraham comes through Jesus, and not, all of Jews resurrecting at the end of time. The resurrection of one Jew at the center of time, who's going to bring peace and justice and reign to the entire world.
Yeah, and it seems like Paul's been having this kind of conversation, as I said when I preached this, this legalistic Jew that's pushing back with these questions. And it seems like the question that he often seems to be getting at is, yes, the faithfulness of God, and also, so this story, he's making the story smaller. He's taking these things away. He's stripping us of these things. And Paul is going, no. He's making it way bigger.
That's it.
You're trying to make it small, and God's trying to rip the lid off and explode it all out, everyone in. Yeah. So wonderful news. That's why we call it the gospel, the good news. So I hope that's helpful. Hope that'll help guide you in some fruitful conversation. Thanks, guys.
We hope you enjoyed the teaching today. If you're wanting to follow along with our community group's discussion guide with your group, you can head to cachurch.ca/media, where you can find the discussion guide. Not only are there questions there related to the sermon, but there's also prayer prompts that relate to the passage or the topic that we were talking about, and practices that you can, on an individual level or a group level, begin integrating into your life to not only bring this knowledge into your mind, but to begin living it out.